written by Dr. Elizabeth Hayes to Mr. Samuel Bellington. Throughout my life, I have always adhered strictly to the rules of science. As a middle-aged scientist, the years spent within the safe walls of my laboratory allowed me to explain the world through the lens of logic. I, Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, was known for my research in natural sciences and human psychology. However, an event that occurred a year ago changed everything for me. The day I lost my husband James, I lost not only the person I loved but also a part of my unconditional faith in science. Watching him struggle against cancer, I painfully realized that science does not have all the answers. As I held his hand in that hospital room where he drew his last breath, I couldn't accept the sudden disappearance of his existence. How could a person cease to exist so abruptly? My grief process took an unusual turn. The times I shut myself in my lab, I was no longer only surrounded by scientific data but also by questions I couldn't answer. I couldn't sleep at night, constantly thinking about James. There were moments when I felt his presence, as if he were sitting in his chair in the study or making his coffee in the kitchen. These sensations led me to investigate paranormal phenomena. At first, I concealed this interest from my colleagues. A respected scientist's curiosity about ghosts wouldn't be well received in academic circles. However, as my research deepened, I realized that I could use scientific methods to investigate paranormal phenomena. It was during this period that I met Samuel Bellington. Samuel was a faculty member in the history department at the university and one of the rare academics who studied paranormal phenomena from a historical perspective. Our first encounter happened in the library's rare books section. As I was examining an old book about ghosts, he approached me and said, "An interesting choice, Dr. Hayes." My friendship with Samuel quickly developed. Among the stories he told, one in particular caught my attention, the story of Myrtles Plantation. This historic mansion in Louisiana was one of America's most famous haunted locations. However, what truly captivated me was the tragic tale of Chloe, who was said to have lived there. One evening, in his office, Samuel told me Chloe's story. In the early 1800s, Chloe was a young slave working on the plantation, and her life was shaped by forbidden love and jealousy. Chloe's spirit is still there, Samuel had said, and some visitors claim to have communicated with her. As I began to delve into Chloe's story, I found myself lost in the details of her life. The old plantation records, newspaper clippings, and eyewitness accounts painted a picture of a woman's tragedy. Chloe was a woman noted for her beauty and grace. Despite being a slave, she held a position different from the other workers on the plantation. However, the event that changed Chloe's life was her forbidden love affair with a handsome man working on the plantation. Initially, this relationship gave her a sense of freedom, but it ultimately turned into a tragedy. Jealousy and fear drove Chloe to a desperate mistake. The poison she prepared to keep her lover from leaving her accidentally caused the death of the plantation owner's family. Each passing day, I felt myself drawn deeper into Chloe's story. I could understand her pains, fears, and regrets. Perhaps the void created by my own loss brought me closer to her tale. I had found a connection between the pain of losing James and the tragedy Chloe had endured. After a long night of research, I decided to visit Myrtles Plantation. When I called Samuel, I noticed the worry in his voice. "Elizabeth, it's not just a historical site," he said. "Unexplained events still occur there. If you decide to go, be careful." As I packed my suitcase, I looked at James' photo. My identity as a scientist clashed with my inner urge to investigate. But I now understood that some questions couldn't be answered with logic alone. My journey to Myrtles Plantation was not just to investigate Chloe's story, but also an opportunity to face my own losses. Before setting off to Louisiana, I gathered all the data, notes, and research methods I had collected throughout my academic career. This time, my research would be different. I would use my scientific methods, but I would also rely on my emotions and intuition. To truly understand Chloe's story, I needed to approach it not just as a scientist, but as a person who had experienced loss. On the last night before my journey, I sat in James's study. Everything in the room was exactly as he had left it. His books, notebooks, even a half-finished cup of coffee. My trip to Myrtles Plantation might help me understand not only Chloe's story but also my own. As I arrived at Myrtles Plantation, the sun was about to set. The immense white mansion took on an eerie beauty in the twilight. With its tall columns and Victorian-style architecture, the building seemed like a portal from the past to the present. The moss hanging from the ancient oak trees in the front yard swayed in the humid Louisiana air. The elderly receptionist, Sarah, greeted me with a peculiar look in her eyes and said, "Ah, Dr. Hayes, we've been expecting you." Her tone suggested she knew I was coming long before I arrived. "We've prepared a suite for you near Chloe's room." The sentence sent a slight shiver down my spine. As I ascended to my room, the creaking of the broad staircase accompanied my steps. The walls were filled with old family portraits, and all their eyes seemed to follow me. One portrait, in particular, caught my attention, a young woman's painting. The brass plaque beneath it read 1820. Sarah whispered, "That's not Chloe, but a portrait from her time." My suite was in the east wing of the building. As Sarah opened the door, the evening light cast shadows over the antique furniture. The room's notable features included a large four-poster bed, a carved writing desk, and an enormous mirror hanging on the wall. "Sometimes shapes appear in the mirror," Sarah said, "especially around midnight." While unpacking, I set up my voice recorder and thermal camera, determined to maintain a scientific approach. Yet, deep down, a voice whispered that this equipment might not be enough to explain what happens here. I placed James' photo on the desk. His presence gave me strength. As I went down for dinner, I met a few other guests in the dining room. Most were tourists or paranormal enthusiasts, but one man, in particular, caught my attention. Named Marcus, he introduced himself as a history researcher and seemed to have detailed knowledge about Chloe's story. Chloe's tragedy wasn't just her own fault, Marcus said throughout dinner. The social structure of that era, the system of slavery, and the position of women, they were all part of this tragedy. His words aligned with my academic research, but something in his tone, like he had personally experienced the events, unsettled me. After dinner, Sarah offered me a nighttime tour of the mansion. "Night is when Myrtles shows its true face," she said. As we walked through the corridors, it felt like every corner held a story, every room a memory. Sarah showed me the places where Chloe was most often seen, the kitchen, the top of the staircase, and especially the library. As we stood in the library, the room suddenly grew cold. Even Sarah's breath became visible in the air. "This is normal," she said calmly. "It always happens when Chloe is here." As I wandered among the shelves, an old journal caught my attention. "This is the plantation owner's wife's diary," Sarah said. "The only first-hand account written about Chloe." I got permission to examine the diary and returned to my room. As midnight approached, I carefully read through its pages. The details about Chloe helped me understand her better. The diary described her as not only beautiful but also intelligent and observant. The plantation owner's wife wrote about Chloe's ability to learn French and her musical talent. Later that night, I thought I saw a movement in the mirror. The silhouette of a woman standing behind me. I quickly turned around, but the room was empty. My voice recorder suddenly started on its own, then stopped. When I played it back, I heard a faint woman's voice. "Can you understand me?" This voice had shaken all my scientific skepticism. Simultaneously, the room's temperature visibly dropped. The thermometer showed a sudden 10-degree drop. The windows were closed, the air conditioning was off. It was a situation inexplicable from a scientific perspective. As I sat on the edge of my bed, looking at James's photo, I whispered, "My love, maybe there are multiple ways to explain some things." That night, in the dark corridors of Myrtles Plantation, I began to understand how fine the line between science and belief truly is. My first night at Myrtles Plantation was filled with echoing voices in my mind. Events unfolded in a way that defied logical explanation. The next morning, as I lay in bed, James's gaze captured me. The memories of the night before came rushing back. The morning sunlight tried to wash away the dark silhouette, but forgetting was not easy. As I sat in the breakfast room, chatting with other guests, Marcus proved the depth of Chloe's story. "There's one more thing," he said. "Chloe's spirit isn't just a memory from the past. Her experiences can touch the souls of those who live here." Those words only heightened my curiosity. Believing that Chloe's spirit roamed beyond her story gave me a new perspective. If there's truly an update here, I need to investigate it more thoroughly, I said. After breakfast, Sarah took me to the rooms Chloe used the most. As I wandered around the kitchen, I felt a presence. The old wooden tables, though worn, seemed to represent a once lively environment. Sarah said, "This is the place Chloe is most often remembered. Some people can feel her here." In that moment, a breeze swept through the cold kitchen. As I slowly turned, I briefly saw Chloe's silhouette, her eyes filled with a deep darkness. When I rubbed my eyes, the silhouette was gone, but I felt a warmth inside. Perhaps Chloe wanted to share something with me. In the following days, I continued to follow Chloe's trails. By repeatedly reading her diary, I understood her better. Her struggle for survival resonated with my own loss. Chloe's desperation reflected my inner turmoil. One evening, while examining the diary, I found a map between the pages. The map showed the forest behind Myrtles Plantation. There was a marked spot, Chloe's secret path. This discovery sparked excitement within me. Perhaps I could learn the secrets behind Chloe's spirit there. The next morning, I decided to head into the forest. I took Marcus and Sarah along. "Let's uncover these secrets together," I said. They were enthusiastic about the idea. As we ventured deeper into the forest, an intense feeling enveloped me. It was as if I were lost among the trees. "There's something here," I said. "We're in the right place to sense Chloe's spirit." My eyes were filled with a powerful sense of being called. As we approached the marked spot on the map, a sense of unease settled in my heart. Suddenly, Sarah said, "Stop. This place feels very different." I stopped and looked around. The forest seemed to darken suddenly, and the air grew heavy. A fear arose within me, but so did a growing desire to understand Chloe. The marked spot on the map ended under a giant oak tree. "There's something here," I said, and began to dig the soil. After a while, I encountered an object beneath the earth. It was Chloe's old necklace, with a stone inside it. The necklace seemed like a key to connecting with Chloe's spirit. At that moment, my belief in Chloe's spirit grew stronger. "I found it," I said. "Maybe Chloe wants to convey a message today." With Marcus and Sarah's support, we examined the necklace. As evening approached, we decided to take the necklace back to Myrtles Plantation. Sarah said, "This necklace might reveal some things here." After dinner, I decided to return to the library. I thought of combining the necklace and the diary to better understand Chloe's story. That night, as I focused on the necklace in the middle of the library, I felt the presence of Chloe's spirit. It seemed as if Chloe wanted to share something with me. The atmosphere in the library changed. When a cold breeze blew, I could almost hear Chloe's voice. "Do not misunderstand me," said the voice, shaking all my doubts once again. I prepared the recording device and said, "Chloe, I am here. I want to tell your story. That night, I found more courage to uncover the mystery of Chloe's story. I will continue my journey to balance science and belief. As I face the shadows of Chloe's loss, I also learned to cope with my own. This is not just a research project, but also an inner journey. Chloe's story will be a guiding light for me. 4 days at Myrtles Plantation, I had reached more of Chloe's presence. I felt no longer just a guest, but like a part of this house's past. Chloe's story filled me and strengthened my connection to her past. Yet there was a universal concern. As time progressed, I had to manage my inner journey while chasing Chloe's spirit. The day I found the necklace, I decided to delve deeper into Chloe's story. With the information we got from the old map, Marcus, Sarah, and I turned to the library books. As we searched the library, we found old newspapers and letters from Chloe's time. We must find more information about Chloe in these documents, I said. A voice inside me told me these documents would guide us. In the initial days of analysis, it became clear that Chloe had a much darker side. As I delved deeper into the events, I realized that Chloe's despair and fear of loss paralleled my own life. Did these losses trap Chloe's spirit here? I wondered. One evening, I decided to hold a session to better understand what happened to Chloe. Maybe we can find a way to connect with Chloe's spirit, I said. Marcus and Sarah were open to the idea. We set up a dark corner for the session, creating a space just for the three of us, away from the crowd. When I started the session, I placed Chloe's necklace in the center of the table. "Chloe, if you are here, communicate with us," I said. Suddenly, the air turned cold. I took a deep breath. I felt uneasy, but at the same time, I sensed Chloe's presence more intensely. After a moment of silence, Marcus said, "I hear something. It sounds like sobbing." The intensity within me grew. "Chloe, is that your voice?" I asked. In that instant, there was a change in the air. It felt like Chloe's spirit was trying to communicate with us. Suddenly, a faint whisper echoed around, "Don't forget me." As the voice became clearer, my heart started to race. I believed I was on the right path to delve deeper into Chloe's story and feel the pain of her soul. After the session, the feelings within me intensified. Chloe's spirit was truly among us. "This spirit has been lost in the shadows of our losses," I said. Marcus added, "There must be more secrets behind this. What happened to Chloe is not just a loss, but perhaps a lasting mark." We decided to search for more documents in the library. We especially wanted to find information about events during Chloe's time. We need to examine Chloe's final days. Perhaps then we can understand the reasons keeping her spirit in this house, I said. Late into the night, while pursuing Chloe, I hoped to uncover a dark secret. As days passed, I felt Chloe's spirit more intensely and understood that her story was transforming internally. The next morning, we set out to continue our research. Marcus said, "Today we need to investigate the early events in Chloe's life. This might help us understand the source of her loss." This time, I worked with sharper eyes and a clearer mind. As we examined each document, I began to better understand the experiences Chloe went through and how her spirit developed. Our findings indicate that Chloe once planned to escape with a man she loved. However, an event disrupted this plan. "We must understand how oppressive slavery was at that time," I said. Chloe's past was not just a personal loss, but the spirit of an entire era. One day, I came across an old diary in which Chloe wrote her story. As I turned the pages, I felt the pain of her soul. Phrases like "not being loved," "being alone" revealed the desperation that enveloped her spirit. "These words inflicted such deep pain on her," I said. As I neared the end of Chloe's history, a glimmer of hope appeared. Her loss could not only uncover the traces of the past, but also open doors to the future. Chloe's spirit became a guide, ensuring my loss would not continue. But as I pursued Chloe's spirit, another shadow of loss began to loom over me. This loss would force me to confront not just the past, but also my own inner self. As I thought about my next step, a sense of unease enveloped my heart. Could my connection with Chloe's spirit help me find the light within? As I grappled with these questions, I felt it was time to take a step into the unknown. As I delved deeper into Chloe's story, the heavy burden of the past became more palpable. In the library, lost in the pages of the diary, I searched for a way to uncover the dark secrets of her soul. Chloe's loss had left a lasting mark not only on her but also on my own spirit. Yet, I knew I had to do something to fill this void. Throughout our sessions, our connection with Chloe's spirit had strengthened. But beyond everything, I felt that something deep within her soul was unraveling. This sense of being lost had a reason that brought her here. Maybe it's time to find Chloe's lost soul, I said. Marcus and Sarah decided to reach this end with me. One evening, we stood in front of the room where Chloe lived. "This is where she spent the most time," I said. When we entered the room, we felt something had changed. The air had cooled and settled over us. "There's something here," I said. I could feel Chloe's presence swirling around us. Sarah began to examine the room. "We need to find some old belongings here. Maybe Chloe's spirit left a clue hidden in this room," she said. We opened the lid of a forgotten chest in the corner of the room. We found old pictures, letters, and some notes written by Chloe. "These belong to Chloe," I said excitedly. "Her loss seems to have severed her connection with the past." As I looked at the pictures, I saw Chloe's youth and hopeful gaze. But the notes on the following pages reflected her desperation and pain. Phrases like "drifting away from the man I love," "I pray he doesn't forget me," deeply moved me. Chloe's loneliness helped me understand the state of mind that had trapped her in this house. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through. "Chloe, if you are here, please give us a sign," I said. At that moment, some objects in the room began to move. Marcus and Sarah were in disbelief. "It's a sign," Marcus exclaimed excitedly. Chloe's spirit was trying to find a way to reach us. "Chloe, we can hear you. You deserve to live the life you dreamed of," I said. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room changed. All the objects suddenly stopped moving, and everything went quiet. This silence made me feel that Chloe's spirit had found peace. Inside, I was filled with the wisdom that Chloe's story had reached its conclusion. "Thank you for not forgetting us, Chloe," I said. These words seemed to be a key for her to leave freely. At that moment, Chloe's spirit appeared before my eyes. The sorrow in her eyes gradually turned into a smile. Her presence made me feel a warmth inside. I was experiencing not the pain of loss, but the joy of reunion. Sarah said, "Maybe the end of this house's and Chloe's story is actually a new beginning." These words shifted the lingering unease into hope. As Chloe's story ended, my journey was moving into a new phase. When we returned to the library, the notes Chloe had written and the documents we found could serve as a starting point for writing her story. "This is an opportunity to reveal her history," I said. "Her loss was actually part of my own inner journey." This connection with Chloe's spirit was a reunion after loss. I had faced the past and emerged from these fragments into the light. In telling Chloe's story, I would not only be sharing her tale but also narrating my own losses. In the end, with the memories from Myrtles Plantation, I set Chloe's spirit free. Her story, from the past to the present, gave meaning to me and my experiences. Her memory would now continue forever in the depths of my soul. And after this journey, I felt a renewed connection to life, reaching my inner peace. This bond with Chloe's spirit was not just a story but also a beacon of hope for the future.